And we're going to go straight over to my first guest. She is in glamorous Istanbul as part of her travels as a top international journalist, our international editor. Welcome, Isabel Oakeshott. How are you doing, Isabel?
Well, Kev, if I look a bit funny, it's because I'm in a windowless hotel room, and it's fair to say that I don't have the best of lighting, but I am excited to join you, and there's plenty to talk about.
Actually, you mentioned to me earlier that the lighting might be terrible. It's not quite up to your usual standard, but it's absolutely fine, and you're looking fantastic as ever. We, of course, need to talk about this government, this awful government, recognising Palestine in a little while. But I think for the average Brit, the biggest story today, which you and I actually sort of highlighted last Tuesday, I believe it was. This is Nigel Farage being the only politician in this country to confront a very, very serious gathering storm. This is the Boriswave. So Boris allowed into the country, while he was Prime Minister, 3.8 million legal migrants. Now, we have a mad system in this country that no matter how you get here, no matter what your circumstances are of residing in this country, after 5 years, you go, I've been here 5 years. And the government said, fair enough, you can stay forever. That's the system. It's called indefinite leave to remain. So if you get to 5 years, no ifs, no buts, you can stay for the rest of your life. And at that point, you qualify for everything that those who were born in this country qualify: full benefits, healthcare, etc., etc. Now, 3.8 million people over the next 2-3 years qualifying for full benefits. That will unleash a welfare tsunami that will almost certainly bankrupt this country. Today, Nigel Farage announced that he will abolish indefinite leave to remain. It just has to be abolished. It must be abolished. He will do it. He also said that he will deport hundreds and thousands of illegal migrants who are in this country unlawfully, and that will save the Exchequer a staggering £230 billion. I mean, frankly, as the only politician brave enough to face this dire situation down in terms of what he said, what's not to like? It has to be done, doesn't it, Isabel?
I mean, it really does have to be done. And I mean, what Reform is proposing is in one way really radical. I mean, it's something that no other political party would dare to articulate. The idea that basically hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people are going to lose their rights to stay in this country, because this isn't just something that they propose will happen in the future. They propose to make it retrospective. So vast numbers of people between now and the next election, whoever ends up winning the next election, basically have a big, heavy question mark hanging over their future in this country. And I think what Reform hopes, what Nigel Farage hopes, is that when they actually look at the reality of what will come under a Reform government, should Reform win the next election, they will voluntarily pack up their bags and go. Now, they're not going to do that immediately, because nobody knows who's going to win the next election. Reform may mess up, things may change, it may not happen. But if Reform were to win the next election, a huge number of people will lose their entitlements to benefit and their kind of lifelong meal ticket in the UK. And they're going to have to face up to the fact that they will either have to get a job or basically ship out. And that makes Reform's pledge to deport lots of people an awful lot easier to achieve. In fact, they won't actually have to do mass deportation if an awful lot of people leave of their own accord.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Boris Johnson, as I called him in my monologue, a Lib Dem in Tory clothing. This guy's not a Conservative. It's ridiculous what he did. His net zero obsession, and this immigration situation is a scandal. It's a scandal what he did to this country. Let's remind ourselves. You spotted this in a column in the Times about a week ago, and we kind of gave it a wider audience, if you like. And ever since then, certain politicians, including Mr. Farage, have been waking up to this. As I say, this is a gathering storm. This is a coming tsunami. If we allow these 3.8 million people, foreigners, to get full benefits, full citizen rights, then this country will go bankrupt. It has to be stopped. It has to be stopped. But let's just remind ourselves of Boris's crimes, if we may. He was elected in 2019. When he was elected, net migration into this country, this is legal migration, was 188,000. Between January 21 and June 2024, an astonishing, as I was saying, 3.8 million foreigners were given UK visas in an unprecedented influx. Now, fewer than a fifth of these people came in on work visas. Digest that for a second. Fewer than a fifth. Nearly all of these migrants who came in the Boriswave weren't workers, are probably still not workers. 5% of these people were skilled and highly paid. They're the kind of migrants we want. 7% came here on healthcare visas, 4.6% on other work visas. The remaining 83% came in as dependents, family, students, or for humanitarian reasons. Now, they are soon to qualify for indefinite leave to remain. And the damage Boris did to this country is incalculable. Now, I applaud and salute Nigel Farage for going public with this. But unfortunately, he's not the government. He's not the Prime Minister. What worries me is, what is Labour doing about this? All we've heard from Labour is that there might be a consultation organised by the Home Office towards the end of the year. Labour has no sense of urgency about this, and we need a sense of urgency because this could be catastrophic.
Well, I fear that Labour won't actually do anything about it. I mean, there's just no way that they would be brave enough to do anything retrospective, that's for sure. And I just can't see them doing it. I think that they will almost carry on, fingers in their ears, la, 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 nothing's happening, nothing to see here. And as you say, I mean, Boris Johnson bears an enormous responsibility and culpability for this crisis. And I think it's just had nowhere near enough political attention. The idea that this over 80% of the vast numbers he let in were basically coming in as non-contributors to the economy is absolutely breathtaking. And in announcing today that if a reform government were lucky enough to win, they would actually unravel the rights of all those people who may, between now and the next election, get rights to remain. That is basically Farage saying, look, we don't trust Labour to do anything about this, and so we're going to have to do something quite extraordinary in British politics, which is to basically pull the rug from under a bunch of people who we don't believe ever should have been allowed to stay in the first place. Once they have indefinite leave to remain, people can bring in their dependents. This is really, really serious.
Yeah, that's a good point, Isabel. We're talking about 3.8 million people who are here. And many of them, should they qualify for indefinite leave to remain, which under the current system, they almost certainly will. As I say, you get to 5 years, no matter how you came here, no matter what your circumstances of residency are. If you get to 5 years, our government basically turns around. Our system has been, we turn around and say, OK, all bets are off, you can stay. You did your 5 years, now you can stay for the rest of your life. This is nodded through. Now, if they do get nodded through on the ILR, the indefinite leave to remain, as you quite rightly say, many of them, probably millions of them, will then start bringing in their families. We will be consumed by a welfare tsunami. So Nigel Farage, as I say, the only tragedy is that Nigel Farage is not the Prime Minister and Reform UK are not the party of government. Our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and Labour's party of government, I don't trust them to confront this. And if they don't, this country is sunk. I mean, this is extraordinary.
It absolutely is. And I think what Reform did today is it actually, at the very least, opened a serious debate about some of the other qualifications that should be necessary if you're going to be allowed to remain in the UK forever. For example, the ability to speak a really good standard of English. I mean, if you're going to be part of our country long term, then you've got to be able to speak the language that most people use, and you've got to be able to pay your way. And the proposals today link the right to be in our country with working visas. So basically, it replaces a kind of assumption that you can stay come what may, with tying your right to be in our country to your ability to get and hold down a well-paid job. And the proposal is to raise very significantly the threshold for what is considered a well-paid job. You know, at the moment, you barely, I mean, the government has actually kind of to and froed a bit on what that threshold should be. I think they were recently talking about actually lowering it. Reform would go way, way higher with that threshold, well above average income, to ensure that we still get the brightest and best. You know, this isn't a kind of wholesale anti-anyone coming in. You know, no sensible political party would not want to attract the absolutely brilliant. But that, unfortunately, is not what guided policy.
Yeah, this isn't about, if anybody says, oh, Kev's being so, Kev and Isabel are being so heartless, Nigel Farage is being heartless. This isn't about social generosity, heartlessness or anything. This is a sheer, practical, massive Uber problem that we have to confront. As Zia Youssef said today, Britain cannot continue in our self-appointed role as the world's food bank. You know, we let in more than anyone else. We allow 48% of all asylum seeker applications to be granted, and so on and so miles more than anyone else. As soon as you get here, you break into the country, we start giving you 50 quid a week and a free hotel. We've got to stop this because and people say, oh, it's, you know, these are fellow human beings. What about the human beings who live here? This costs a lot of tax money, and the people who live here, millions of people who live here, are struggling with that tax. They're struggling to get by. So this is about a British government looking after British people, and we must cease this bizarre practice we have of prioritising foreigners over British citizens. It's got to stop, absolutely 100%. When we come back, Isabel, we'll talk about the other element of the migrant crisis, the illegal migrant crisis. We'll talk about that after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I was just discussing with my excellent guest, Talk's international editor Isabel Oakeshott, our legal migrant crisis, which is enormous, which is massive, which is coming to a head thanks to the Boris wave. Let's now, Isabel, talk about the illegal migrant crisis. And now, on Friday, 1,072 migrants came in. Slowed down over the weekend, 85 on Saturday. Looks like no one came in yesterday. However, 1,072, that's right up near the record books. Now, the one in, one out scheme is supposed to be a deterrent. Now, I don't cut the Tories any slack whatsoever as they stand there sniping from the wings. Saying, oh, Labour are messing up the migrant crisis. Well, it's your fault, you lot, you Tories. So Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, I'm going to cut him some slack now because he said something that makes sense. But let's just get this into context. The Tories were so far probably even more disastrous than Labour on the migrant crisis. Labour seem to be surging ahead now. Incredibly, they're within a few weeks probably of making it even worse than the Tories, which is no mean feat. But as these 1,072 came in, 85 on that, this deluge last week coming in, the one in, one out scheme, they started to get rolling. They managed to get 3 migrants out by last Friday. Still a load of legal challenges on other migrants. And they were up there sort of trumpeting this, shouting it from the rooftop. Look, we've started to get migrants, but yeah! I mean, people are just going, what the hell are these people on about? Chris Philp quite rightly saying that boasting, Labour, Starmer and his idiot cabinet twonks, boasting about the success of the one in, one out scheme, 3 out, tens of thousands in, it's just simply absurd. It's absurd. Who the hell do they think they're kidding?
I mean, they're kidding absolutely nobody except perhaps themselves. That absolutely extraordinary, delusional now junior minister, I think, Mike Tapp, put out this tweet on social media.
He's the Dover MP, isn't he? Dover MP.
At the end of last week, warning would-be channel migrants not to waste their money coming over, because if they come to the UK, they will be deported. I mean, this is just a lie. The statistics suggest they have an infinitesimal chance of being deported. And I'm really glad that you're still talking about this, Kev, and the 1,000 plus that came over on the day that they were boasting about the removal of 2 or 3. Because I think we've got to keep on exposing the lies and exposing the shortcomings. It's gaslighting the entire nation to pretend that this problem is in any way being tackled when it so demonstrably isn't. I mean, when you think about those numbers, 1,000 plus in
a single day, yeah.
Think about the logistics of that. Think about how much accommodation is needed for all those people. Think about the scale of the catering, the welfare, the healthcare, the problems that importing that many people in one day creates. And then think about that replicated multiple times over every month. And you get some idea why our country is on its knees.
Yeah, and this scheme started, it was announced in early July. It started in early August. And since then, more than 10,000 migrants have crossed the channel illegally. Something like, I think it was mid-September, was it? A couple of weeks ago, Shabana Mahmood became the new Home Secretary. Something like 5,000 have come over since she became Home Secretary. So the whole point of one in, one out, according to the government, I'm only quoting them, it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent so that when migrants come across a channel, that they believe, or this ridiculous government believes, that telling these migrants, you come across the channel, there's a 1 in 17 chance that we could pick on you to be returned to France under one in, one out. There you go. So don't risk it. They'll go, well, that's well worth the risk. Particularly as it's very easily challengeable. If you get chosen for deportation, immigration lawyers are successfully challenging these deportations left, right and centre. So it was never a deterrent, and it has been proved it's not a deterrent by the absolute invasion only on Friday. This just proves it. The people smugglers, what was it, Shabana Mahmood said, we've dealt a huge blow to the people smuggling gangs on the day that 1,072 migrants came over courtesy of the people smuggling gangs who would have made a fortune out of it. You haven't dealt any blow whatsoever to the smuggling gangs. Not a single blow at all has been struck on these evil people. Nonsense. Palpably, we could see before our very eyes, this isn't a deterrent. It isn't deterring anyone. So then you come to the actual tenets of the scheme itself, which is, it doesn't solve anything anyway, because numerically you just swap one for another. So we send them one, French send us one back.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do anything numerically. The chance of being deported is clearly not working as a deterrent. So all this scheme is an additional, pretty high, completely unnecessary expense for the British taxpayer. It is a complete waste of time and money. There is already, it's obvious, there is no point to it whatsoever. Am I right?
I actually think it's even worse, and you've portrayed it, because if you continually advertise your incompetence to the whole world, what you do is continue to advertise the benefits of keeping on trying to come to Britain, to would-be migrants, you know, by shouting about a scheme and then it's so obviously not working. All that does is send out a message to would-be new arrivals from all over the world that it's most definitely worth giving it a go, because the British government has absolutely no control whatsoever. And we keep on showing that. It's worse than nothing. It would be better to actually keep really quiet and leave a question mark over what happens to people when they reach the UK if they've come here illegally. But instead, we've advertised it and advertised like one forlorn figure being deported to France, you know, from India. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. And as we were saying on Friday, Kev, it isn't even swapping like for like, because we are sending people back who have no chance whatsoever of remaining. You know, they have no basis to their case. Whereas France is sending us people who actually have apparently met some spurious or real criteria for remaining. So we're swapping a no-hoper for a definite stayer. Yeah. That doesn't stack up to me.
Yeah, I bet you some of these migrants coming over from France under one in, one out are probably coming to live with their relatives who arrived here during the Boriswave. Honestly, you just go from useless government to useless government. It really is a joke. And I just want to finally say, I'd like to hear from you folks, from the fabulous audience. Do you share my anger, my fury, that this government is insulting our intelligence? You know, we see 1,072 coming across the channel on Friday, and the government goes, yeah, we got 3 back on the one in, one out scheme, though. 3, got 3 back. I mean, how do they think they're kidding? 03444991000. Next up, Isabel, another government horror, the recognition of Palestine as a state. Stay tuned for that, folks. Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor Isabel Oakeshott, who's on a mission. She's in Istanbul at the moment. Now, Isabel, let's talk. Well, let's talk about this. This is Keir Starmer recognising Palestine.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
So, Isabel, as we approach October the 7th, the anniversary of Hamas's atrocious, disgusting invasion of Israel, let's remember what they did. I mean, they murdered, they slaughtered around about 1,100 innocent Jews. They decapitated babies. They put babies into the oven and turned the ovens on. They raped women. They slaughtered kids, innocent kids. Here we are, approaching the anniversary of that heinous event, as the Jewish people will tell you, the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust, since the Nazis. What does our Prime Minister do? He rewards Hamas, the perpetrators of this evil abomination. He rewards them. What do they want? They want recognition of the Palestinian state. And for murdering 1,100 people, raping women, killing babies, Keir Starmer has decided to give them what they want. What on earth is he thinking?
Well, Kev, I was only slightly smiling there because Keir Starmer sounded so ridiculous as he said all this in a completely artificially slow fashion. You know, you felt that he was doing it because what was it Blair said about Northern Ireland, something about the hand and feeling the hand.
I'm not one for sound bites, but the hand of history is on my shoulder.
That is what Keir Starmer was channeling there. You felt that he was playing and performing for the history books, for the record. But in a sense, it's meaningless. What is this Palestinian state that he's recognised? Where is the government of this state? Where exactly are the borders of this state? How is this state controlled? I mean, none of it makes any sense. At the moment, what you've got in Palestine is, without a doubt, a total humanitarian nightmare. You've got very little infrastructure. And essentially, he's recognising something that just isn't there. A complete and utter horror of a mess, and it's all about appeasing his own Labour voters, basically his parliamentary party, the backbenchers, and so many of the of the hard left. And I think it's a shameful decision.
It's a dark day in British history. It really, really is. And apart from alienating our old allies, Israel and America, and, by the way, risking to have to pay £2 trillion in reparations should a Palestinian state ever materialise. That's what we might have to pay if this happens. So apart from alienating Israel and America, our oldest allies, and risking £2 trillion in reparations, what has Starmer actually achieved? What is Britain achieving by recognising Palestine? It's actually nothing. A lot of people said, well, it was in the Labour Party manifesto. Well, it was, but only if it was part of a peace process. If peace could be achieved by Britain recognising Palestine, the Labour manifesto said we will do that. But it had to be geared towards a peace settlement. David Lammy, who was out on the media rounds at the weekend, he accepted, no, this isn't going to bring about a ceasefire or peace. So then people would say, oh, well, what it is, it's Starmer and Labour because they want to secure or to keep the Muslim vote. Well, they pretty much already had that. So they really didn't need to go the extra mile with this recognition. I really do fear, Isabel, that this is just classic old school Labour. You know, can't stand Israel, doesn't like the Jews, and therefore is going to recognise Palestine. A sort of throwback to Corbynism, if you like. There's a morally right thing to do. Well, I'm sorry, but this is international politics, not Sunday school. So I don't think Starmer's achieved anything except for a bit of classic Labour socialist virtue signalling. And that is no way to fall out with the entire Western world. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's a really serious question, I suppose, for opposition parties, which is whether they would reverse it. And I'm not sure whether any of the opposition parties have actually showed their hand on this. You know, you might hope that some would go down that route and say, if we get into power, we will reverse it. But it's not that easy a thing to do. You know, it takes a long time for governments, and particularly the Foreign Office, to change anything on these sorts of subjects. I mean, quite recently, David Lammy, as Foreign Secretary, did something quite unexpected and recognised the Western Sahara as part of Morocco. And that was after years of the UK being an outlier. It was a very welcome development, but it took a long time And so I really fear for the long-term implications of this policy. I mean, you asked what has Labour gained? Well, as you know, I live in the Middle East and I read the papers, the Middle Eastern papers every day. And naturally, there's huge amount of coverage about the suffering of ordinary civilians in Gaza and the death and destruction. So I suppose if we're going to be even-handed and fair here, we would say that this shift in position, this momentous declaration, will, I suppose, garner some favour in the Arab world. Of course it will do. But the price of that is the loss of other allies. And, the Jewish community in the UK feels so abandoned. They feel so isolated, and as if so much of our country has turned its back on them. And this will only exacerbate that despair.
And also there was this pathetic, as if a sort of appeasement to Donald Trump and indeed Netanyahu. Oh, we'll recognise Palestine, but we're going to up the ante on sanctions to Hamas. Oh, big deal. Hamas, of course, as he said, no, this isn't to reward terrorism. Yes, it is. This isn't to reward Hamas. Well, how come Hamas were pretty much holding parties in the streets today? They were so thrilled by this development. Hamas have been rewarded for one of the worst atrocities in the history of the human race, and Starmer should hang his head in shame. I tweeted today another reason he should hang his head in shame. You won't believe this, Isabel. 3 hours ago on Twitter, he posted this, the Prime Minister, wishing all Jewish communities celebrating Rosh Hashanah a happy and sweet new year. May it be full of blessings and joy. Shana Tova. How dare he? How dare he do that? I mean, if nothing else, what a tin ear to do that today.
What an absolutely extraordinary, tin-eared thing to do, as you say. But it is so in keeping with Keir Starmer, the absolute blundering inability to read the room, the crass insensitivity of that. Today, of all days, the last time they want to hear something from Keir Starmer of that nature, all they will be thinking right now is just get back in your bunker and stay there.
Yeah. And finally, before we go to break, let's make it clear that this is water off Benjamin Netanyahu's back. He could give a damn. He's already resigned himself to the kind of philosophical opposition of Britain, of this socialist government. He's used to that. He doesn't really care. As you said earlier, it's a pretty meaningless gesture. My wife said, what was like recognising Narnia or something? It's recognising a state that doesn't exist. So it's purely performative, it's self-harming, and it has alienated our allies Israel and America, and I don't know what we've gained from it apart from a bit of Jeremy Corbyn Jew-hating, self-congratulatory virtue signalling. It's just disgusting. It's a very low point in British history. I mean, I knew Starmer could stoop low, but I didn't think he'd go this low. I won't make that mistake about him again. I'm appalled, absolutely appalled. Let's go to break. Talking of appalled, lovely link this. I'm also appalled by Fergie, the Duchess of York. We'll find out about her shenanigans in just a second. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, I wouldn't normally burden you with the very few highs and very many lows of the awful life of Fergie, the Duchess of York, but I think today we have to make an exception because this is a remarkable situation, an extraordinary situation, that the Duchess of York has today been dropped by 7 children's charities and counting. She's basically being dropped unpersoned. One of the papers said, "Oh, the Duchess of York is being cancelled." No, there's being cancelled as if, I say something like, a trans woman, you know, isn't a woman. You know, a man in a trans woman is a bloke in a dress. You know, you get cancelled for that kind of politically correct howler, if you like. That's being cancelled. You know, we've always cancelled people if, for example, I don't know, they're found guilty of rape or murder. You get cancelled for that kind of thing. We always have done. So let's not confuse what's happened to Fergie with being cancelled for some kind of, you know, woke reason. She's being cancelled because of her abysmal behaviour. She's always made a massive thing on children's charities. She gave an interview. Jeffrey Epstein paid off, well, you know, one of her many debts. She had a £15,000 credit card bill. He paid it off, I think in 2011 or something. She gave an interview after that as his downfall was unfolding. Oh, tremendous error of judgment. This payment by Jeffrey Epstein on my credit card was approved by the Duke's office, in other words, her awful husband, Andrew. And so, in other words, laying off the blame. Not my fault, not my fault, not my fault. We now know, as revealed in the papers on Sunday, that as she was apologising in this kind of effusive, such an error of judgment, I'm so sorry, I will never speak to that guy again, I'm sorry he came into my life, I made a big mistake. At that same time, she's writing him a private email saying, I'm really sorry I had to say this, didn't mean it, love you, you're my supreme friend, da 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 da. In other words, I suspect she didn't want to cut off the possible flow of cash. Now, this kind of duplicity is beyond the pale. Now, Fergie has always gotten away with her terrible behaviour, toe-sucking, etc. You know, taking money to sell the royal family down the river and so on and so forth. She's always got away with it because she's a kind of comical figure. Not exactly the sharpest pin in the pack, not that bright, kind of a bit of a bull in a giant china shop, a jolly hockey sticks idiot, really, that we all sort of went, oh, well, it's just Fergie, you know, couldn't put a foot right if she tried, and so on and so forth. But I think this story shows a different side to her. This, I think, is a window into her rancid soul. She is a venal, duplicitous woman who has only ever been interested in the contents of her own wallet. And for this, both her and her husband must be exorcised from public life. They were seen driving out of Windsor Great Park today, out of their home, I think in his Range Rover, and she's like hiding in the back, you know, trying to avoid the cameras. And I was thinking, there goes Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. The king is even thinking now, apparently, of cutting both of them out of private royal gatherings, let alone public royal gatherings. Both of them have disgraced themselves to an extraordinary extent, and that's it with Fergie. She's got to go. I don't ever want to hear about this woman again. Do you agree?
I think what is so awkward and cringeworthy about this is what people object to from anyone in public life, which is a glaring discrepancy between what they say in public and what they're actually saying behind the scenes. And it's exactly what Fergie did, replicates exactly what Peter Mandelson did, you know, saying on the one hand, you know, I utterly condemn, you know, I'm just paraphrasing here, utterly condemn this dreadful creature, Jeffrey Epstein, you know, I don't want anything to do with him, you know, having anything to do with him is one of the worst mistakes in my life. And yet privately they're busy writing him letters and emails saying, I am so sorry I had to say that, but you know, you're my best friend and you mean so much to me, and you know, I basically just had to say that to keep the press happy. That's what Peter Mandelson did, that is what Fergie did, and it's really ugly. It's excruciating and comes at just not at a good time for the royals. This is a last thing that the king needs right now, is yet more controversy surrounding his brother and his ex-wife. You know, it's just it's just the end of the road, don't you think, for the Yorks? You know, we've had enough of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That I just think it's the end of the story for the Duchess and Duke of York. Fergie and Andy, you know, they can go to hell. They're a terrible, terrible couple. And what is interesting, what you were saying about Jeffrey Epstein generally, bringing in Mandelson. Don't forget all of his other acolytes, people like Bill Clinton. Andrew, of course, and so on and so forth. It's remarkable, isn't it, how reluctant and reticent people are to sever ties from someone who could be a source of good money. You know, Epstein bought his friends, and in not cutting him off, I think all of them were just hoping to maybe keep their snouts into the trough, Mandelson including. But Fergie, this is it. She's skated close to the wind. She's sailed close to the wind many times. She's tested the nation's patience, trying to sell the royal family down the river for access. Toe sucking with that guy Johnny Bryan in Texas. Remember that? While she was supposed to still be married to Andrew, and so on. She's tested our patience many times, but as I say, in the end we've all gone, oh, you know, Fergie, silly old jolly hockey stick, silly old bag, always getting herself into trouble, no idea how to behave, bit gauche, doesn't dress very well, ha ha ha, she's quite funny, isn't she? Well, today, over the weekend, she's not quite funny, she's awful. She's a bad person. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And if what I'm saying was in any way wrong, I've never seen charities drop someone so quickly as today. Seven charities have dropped her as patron.
Sorry, Kev, I lost you there for a minute, which was a bit weird. I know, I was thinking I do feel quite sorry for her daughters.
Yeah.
You know, those princesses, I mean, they've just never, ever been able to have a kind of clear run at being junior royals, have they? Minor royals, because they've always been carrying the burden of their parents' antics. You know, primarily their father, who just continues to bring shame on the family all the time. But now also their mother, and it must be really, really difficult for them. And you know, I guess some would say, and the king would probably say, actually, we just don't need, you know, the minor royals. Let's concentrate it down to the few figures that we can really rely on not to bring embarrassment. And it's a shrinking band, isn't it?
It is. It's got Harry to worry about as well. What a mess, what a mess. And Fergie, I'm afraid that's it. The drawbridge is being pulled up. You must retire from public life along with your awful husband. Isabel, thanks for tonight. I didn't think we were going to see you this week. I know we won't see you for the rest of the week. Look after yourself and we will talk next week. Good luck.